Let's talk about something that can really dial up the stress in any homeschool: assessment. Tests, grades, all that stuff. But we're going to talk about how to completely transform it from something that causes anxiety into your single best tool for clarity, so you can really see and support your child's growth in a whole new way. Just for a second, I want you to go back in time. Remember that feeling, getting a paper handed back to you just covered in red ink? That drop in your stomach? That feeling of being judged, measured, and basically boiled down to a number? It's a really heavy feeling. And honestly, that's the model of assessment most of us grew up with.
But what if we could just flip that script completely? What if tracking progress wasn't about hunting for mistakes, but was actually about building a deeper connection? What if it was a way to listen so closely to your child that you knew exactly what they needed next on their journey? Well, that's the big, powerful idea we're going to dig into.
And that brings us to our first major shift in thinking. It's all about moving away from that traditional kind of rigid model of testing and stepping into a much more insightful and frankly human practice of observation.
So the old way, that's the test-to-label mindset. It's all about judging and sorting. It's constantly asking, is my kid behind? Are they ahead? But this new approach, observe to understand, it's about listening. It asks a much better, much more helpful question. What is my child's work telling me about what they need next? See the difference? One is a judgment, the other is a guide.
The writer, Sean Taylor, just nails it with this quote. The goal is not to measure what your child cannot do. The goal is to reveal the path forward with such clarity that your next step feels obvious. I mean, wow. That one idea changes everything, doesn't it? Assessment stops being a verdict on where they are and becomes this beautiful, illuminated map for where to go next.
Okay, so if we're observing instead of just testing, what does that actually look like day to day? It sounds nice, but how do we do it? Let's break down how to build this philosophy into a real, practical, living system.
Think of it like a little ecosystem with 3 connected parts. First, you've got screening. This is your wide-angle shot just asking, broadly speaking, where is my child? Then you have the diagnostic part. This is where you zoom in and ask, okay, what specific skills are there or what little pieces are missing? And finally, you have the heartbeat of the whole system, progress monitoring. This is your regular check-in, asking, are we growing? Is this working? Where are we going next?
So with that system in mind, you're going to need the right tools. And I'm talking about tools that are low stress, give you tons of information, and are designed for observation, not for judgment. So let's look at a couple of really powerful examples.
The key idea here is something called formative assessment. Now, unlike a big final exam, which is what we call summative, formative checks happen during the learning process. They're these little, low-stakes moments where you gather info so you can adjust what you're doing right then and there. It's like a chef tasting the soup while it's still on the stove, not waiting until it's already in the bowl. And a really cool, maybe even surprising example of a formative tool is the song test. Yeah, it sounds like fun and games, and it is, but it's secretly one of the most data-rich and human-centered assessments you can possibly do. It's kind of brilliant in its simplicity. You just time how long it takes your kid to memorize a new song. But what you're really measuring is a whole bunch of cognitive skills. Their working memory, how they process sounds, sequencing, how quickly they pick up patterns, even their motivation. A child who takes 2 weeks to learn a song in September might only take 2 days to learn a new one by May. That's not just a cute little anecdote. That's a tangible growth curve. Okay, so the song test gives you this great window into cognitive skills. But what about a core academic subject like reading? Well, for that, there's another amazing tool called the running record. It's a super simple technique. While your child is reading a passage out loud, you just make a little mark for every word they get right and you make a note of any errors. You're not grading them, you're creating this living, breathing portrait of how their brain is making sense of the words on the page. And this little table, this is your secret decoder ring. By quickly calculating their accuracy, you can see if a book is at their independent level, perfect for them to read on their own. Or maybe it's at their instructional level, which is that sweet spot where they can grow with a little bit of your help. Or if it's below 90%, it's at the frustration level. And that's just a signal that this book is too hard right now. This one simple tool empowers you to pick the right book at the right time, every single time.
So we have the philosophy, we have some tools, but how do we weave all this into our lives without it just becoming another stressful thing on the to-do list? The answer is all about finding a natural, easy rhythm.
This timeline here shows you just how seamless it can be. On a daily basis, it's just brief, embedded observation, noticing things. Weekly, maybe take a quick formative snapshot, like a 1-minute reading check. Monthly, you might do a running record or save a writing sample to put in a portfolio. And then quarterly, you can sit down and review that portfolio together. You see how nothing here feels like a big, scary test? It's just a simple rhythm of paying attention.
And you know what? When you start observing your child this way, you realize something profound. You start to see that the most important data, the stuff that really tells you what's going on, it almost never comes from a score on a test. It comes from watching for the real signals of learning.
So instead of looking for a grade, you start looking for these 5 signals. Automaticity. Is a skill becoming second nature, almost effortless? Mastery. Are they getting it right in different situations? Transfer. This is a big one. Can they take a skill they learned here and apply it to something totally new over there? Effort. How much mental energy is this taking them now compared to before? And finally, independence. Are they using the skill on their own without you having to prompt them? These are the things that tell the true, rich story of your child's progress.
When you get right down to it, this entire approach boils down to a single, really beautiful idea. Every little note you take, every running record, every conversation you have about their work, that's not just paperwork. It's a daily practice of truly seeing your child. It's love made visible. And that really just leaves us with one final question. Because the goal here isn't just to track their progress. It's to deepen your connection and your understanding. So with all these ideas in your back pocket, how will you start seeing your child's growth in a new light starting today?